to continue Magdalena Maksymuk. She talked about Russia's aggression and genocide and culture of genocide, and I can say that Russia's handwriting is the same everywhere, because we have the same in Abkhazia, and Russia tried to erase not only Georgian history and culture, but even Abkhazians. it's quite, but it's Russian. Okay, now I want to talk about my speech is Ukraine's constitutional order, national minority dichotomy amid Russian aggression. Today's conference entitled Ukraine loses as a result of Russian full-scale military aggression, and I have reviewed the agenda of this conference. The vast majority of speakers, in keeping with the title of the conference, concern the Ukraine's losses. It may sound paradoxical, but I am not going to talk about Ukraine's losses, quite the opposite. I begin with what may appear a profound paradox. Russia's brutal aggression against Ukraine, a catastrophe by every humanitarian, economic and geopolitical measure, has inadvertently delivered what decades of internal politics could not. In the midst of unspeakable tragedy, Ukraine has gained something remarkable, a unified national identity that transcends ethnicity, language, and regional divisions. This paradox forms the heart of my presentation today. While our conference rightly examines Ukraine's losses as a result of Russian full-scale military aggression, I invite you to consider this unexpected counterpoint, not to diminish the immeasurable suffering inflicted upon Ukraine, but to recognize how adversity has forged a new national consciousness with profound constitutional implications. Today in Ukraine, both ethnic Ukrainians and ethnic Russians, as well as ethnic Poles, Georgians, Jews, and other representatives of so-called ethnic minorities who are citizens of Ukraine, are fighting against Russian aggression. What Russia thought to fracture, it has instead solidified. What it attempted to divide along ethnic and linguistic lines has merged into a civic Ukrainian identity that challenged the very constitutional dichotomy between nation and national minorities that I will explore today. The constitutional treatment of national identities represents more than mere legal technicality. It reflects foundational philosophies about statehood, citizenship, and belonging. In an era where ethno-national narratives have been weaponized to justify territorial claims and military interventions, these constitutional provisions take on strategic importance beyond their normative significance. Ukraine's constitution, adopted in 1996, and subsequently amended, established a nuanced dual approach to national identity. The preamble begins with a declaration that is simultaneously inclusive and differentiated. The Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, on behalf of the Ukrainian people, citizens of Ukraine of all nationalities. This opening phrase acknowledges the multi-ethnic composition of the Ukrainian population while maintaining the primacy of a singular Ukrainian people. The Constitution proceeds to elaborate this duality in Article 11. The state promotes the consolidation and development of the Ukrainian nation, its historical consequences, traditions and culture, as well as the development of the ethnic, cultural, linguistic and religious identity of all indigenous peoples and national minorities of Ukraine. This provision recognizes three distinct categories: the Ukrainian nation, indigenous people, and national minorities. The constitutional text thus creates a framework that simultaneously affirms, first, the existence of a core Ukrainian nation, second, the legitimate presence and rights of indigenous people, and third, the protected status of national minorities. Sure, this tripartite approach attempts to balance national cohesion with multicultural recognition. The 2019 amendments further strengthened the state's commitment to European and Euro-Atlantic integration, adding another layer to Ukraine's constitutional identity. In stark contrast, for example, Georgia's constitution adopts what we might term a unitary civic approach. The Georgian constitutional framework deliberately avoids explicit reference to national minorities as a distinct legal category. Instead, it establishes a conception of Georgian citizenship that transcends ethnic, linguistic, or religious differentiation. I would like here to compare these provisions on nation and minority to similar provisions of Georgian constitution. The preamble of Georgian constitution declares that we, the citizens of Georgia, whose firm will is to establish a democratic social order, economic freedom, and so on, bearing in mind the centuries-old traditions of the statehood of the Georgian nation, proclaim this constitution before God and the nation. While acknowledge the Georgian nation in historical terms, the operative constitutional subject is unmistakable: the citizens of Georgia, a civic rather than ethnic designation. Article 11 of Georgia's constitution further establishes all persons are equal before the law. Any discrimination on the grounds of race, color, sex, origin, ethnicity, language, religion, political or other views, social affiliation, property or titular status, place of residence, or on any other ground shall be prohibited. This approach reflects a philosophical position that the recognition of minorities as constitutionally distinct categories might itself perpetuate division rather than foster integration. Georgia's approach reflects what scholars have termed constitutional nationalism of non-recognition, a deliberate choice to avoid constitutional entrenchment of ethnic categories in favor of a purely civic conception of the polity. Ukraine conversely adopts what we might call constitutional nationalism of differential recognition, acknowledging both the primacy of the Ukrainian nation and the legitimate place of minorities within the state. Russia's aggression in Ukraine since 2014, culminating in the full-scale invasion of 2022, has starkly demonstrated how discourses of minority protection can be weaponized to undermine state sovereignty. The Russian Federation has consistently invoked the protection of Russian-speaking population as justification for its intervention in Crimea and eastern Ukraine. This strategic exploitation of minority discourse presents a profound challenge to Ukraine's constitutional order. Now, the Russian narrative essentially seeks to transform that Ukraine's constitution frames as internal diversity into grounds for external intervention. Most perniciously, it attempts to recast Ukraine's constitutional recognition of minorities as evidence of second-class citizenship rather than as a guarantee of pluralism. Georgia faced similar challenges during the 2008 Russia-Georgia war, when Russia claimed to be protecting South Ossetia and Abkhazian populations. However, Georgia's constitutional non-recognition of minorities as distinguished legal categories meant that Russian narratives had to rely more heavily on historical rather than contemporary constitutional claims. The contrasting approach of Ukraine and Georgian challenge us to move beyond simplistic binaries in constitutional theory. Neither approach should be understood as inherently more democratic or protective than the other. Rather, they represent different strategies for addressing the complex relationship between national identity and citizenship in post-Soviet context. Ukraine's approach acknowledges historical and cultural differences while attempting to forge a common political identity. Georgia's approach emphasizes civic equality while avoiding potential hierarchies that might emerge from constitutional categorization. Both face the challenge of building cohesive political communities while representing diversity. The Russian aggression against both countries has brought these constitutional choices into sharp relief. Demonstrating that constitutional provisions on national identity are not merely symbolic but carry strategic significance in context of geopolitical contestation. The Russian aggression against Ukraine has yielded a profound and perhaps unintended consequence, the acceleration and strengthening of Ukrainian civic national identity. What began as an attempt to fracture Ukrainian society has instead catalyzed an unprecedented consolidation of Ukrainian civic nationhood that transcends ethnic, linguistic, and regional differences. This phenomenon deserves particular attention when examining Ukraine's constitutional order. Prior to 2014, debates about Ukrainian identity often centered on regional, linguistic, and ethnic divisions. However, the existential threat posed by Russian aggression has fundamentally transformed this discourse. We are witnessing the emergence of a modern, unified Ukrainian civic nation where individuals of diverse ethnic backgrounds increasingly identify primarily as Ukrainian citizens. This emergent civil identity suggests that Ukraine's constitutional framework may need to evolve the current constitutional distinction between the Ukrainian nation and national minorities. Increasingly appears at odds with the lived reality of Ukrainian society. What we observe is that formation of a singular Ukrainian political nation composed of citizens of various ethnic backgrounds, united by shared civic values and commitment to Ukrainian statehood. In addition, in contemporary political discourse, the term nation is best understood in its civic or political sense, referring to a collective of individuals united by common citizenship within a sovereign state. This understanding emphasizes legal and institutional bonds over cultural or ethnic ties. Conversely, ethnicity denotes a cultural identity rooted in shared language, heritage, traditions, and historical memory. While ethnic minorities may retain distinct cultural characteristics, they exist within the broader framework of a unified political nation. This distinction is particularly important in multi-ethnic states, states seeking to balance national unity with cultural diversity. Thus, the term nation should be used in a civic or state-related sense, whereas ethnic minority should be understood as a historical cultural phenomenon within the unified Ukrainian nation. Thus, the parts of the united Ukrainian state nation are those citizens of Ukraine, ethnic Ukrainians, ethnic Russians, Poles, Georgians, Jews, and others who are currently fighting Russian aggression. In conclusion, it should be said that Ukraine might benefit from constitutional reforms that move closer to Georgia's civic model, emphasizing a unitary conception of citizenship that transcends ethnicity. The constitution should focus on the Ukrainian nation as a political rather than ethnic category, encompassing all citizens regardless of ethnic background, language, or religion. This is not to suggest that Ukraine should abandon constitutional protections for cultural, linguistic, and religious diversity. Rather, this protection might be reframed not as protections for minorities, but as rights belonging to all Ukrainian citizens, recognizing diversity as internal to rather than separate from Ukrainian national identity. Thank you very much.